We'll call the meeting to order. Jen, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Waldner. Commissioner Thel.
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under appearances and acknowledgments, we have Matt Jaratowski on bid requirements. Would you like to come to the microphone and visit with us on? You're closer to the mic.
I don't know really how to start this, I guess, but really trying to figure out what it takes and why we got an amendment prior to a bid being due, I guess.
Okay. Did you get a chance to visit with Chad in that prior to tonight?
No, we're busy running around working that.
Okay.
We don't have any extra free time.
Then I guess I would defer to Chad. Chad, did you catch the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Matt and I spoke very briefly earlier today, and with that bid, there was an addendum issued. Let me get my dates out. I think it was the Friday. The bid was opened on. Excuse me. The bid. The item May 1st was the bid opening. We advertised on April 19th and 26th. There was an addendum issued on the 27th, April 27th. That was a Friday. And so the bid was opened on the Tuesday. And so addendums are issued in the course of bidding regularly for different things depending on what come up on different projects. This particular addendum was determined necessary because the plan notes that we had developed as part of the project inadvertently were not inserted in there as a little over a page of notes. And so when we observed that, we immediately put it into an addendum and then issued it to all the bidders on the plan holders list. There was 10 bidders on the plan holders list, and all 10 of them received that addendum that day. And then that had the requirements that we incorporated to provide for what I believe was a suitable parking lot project. Essentially, we mimicked most of the specifications that were used on the other parking lot last year.
On the North Egan parking lot.
Correct.
And the one we're addressing right now for the benefit of those at home is the south parking lot that's between Wallenberg's, Ritzman, and I think it's the Smokehouse to the south.
Foley's.
To the south.
So that's generally the addendum process, a little bit of the particulars of this particular addendum. I can get into more detail as necessary.
Okay, did it require any additional, well, if the advertisement went on the 26th and the 27th, and then it was due in on?
May 1st.
May 1st?
Correct.
Okay. Did anyone else have any questions in that on?
I didn't receive any questions on the, if there was any questions, they were rather minor. I don't think Mr. Jaratowski, is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. Had asked me questions about the addendum. A couple other minor questions, I believe, from some survey firms who just had some questions about some of the staking requirements on the project. So I didn't get any other questions. And then after the bid, there was 6 bidders that submitted bids for the project. A particular part of the addendum that was included was for the anybody who had not worked in Madison as a subcontractor or prime contractor to fill out it's called a bidder statement of qualifications. It's a form we've used in the past for others who haven't worked in the city of Madison to get qualifications and determine, if it's adequate, their qualifications, basically to see what their qualifications are. Is this somebody we would who has done similar type of work? They have a good quality and such like that. So we just asked for those qualifications to be submitted with the bid. That would have been used in the bid review process. In hindsight, there was 3 of the 6 bidders hadn't worked as a sub or a prime in within the last 5 years as well, so they would have had to complete that. I don't know if they did indeed submit it, but since they weren't the low or the second low bidder, I didn't research that before tonight's agenda.
Matt?
I mean, I really don't get the purpose of it, I guess, because whoever the contractor is that gets the job is going to be responsible whether it's right or wrong. If it's wrong, they got to fix it, hands down. So I really don't get the purpose of why we have to do this, because I can go to any other city and have no issues. I come here, try to do anything, it's like we have to jump through hoops. Like us as a city should be more concerned about why we're losing good contractors. You know, like why are we so now we're down to Double H. That's all you see in town is Double H. We had Seal Pros last year, something happened last year. I don't think they'll ever come back. Like, there's so much stuff going on that we're losing the opportunity to have good contractors in town because of all these stipulations that you put on them.
When you say other towns, could you be more specific?
Yeah, Ramona, Coleman, Colton, Wentworth, all
Okay.
the surrounding towns. We do 90% of our work out of town because of all your stipulations that you guys have. Like you call for a density test, you do a density test, if it doesn't meet it, you have to tear it back out and redo it, right?
No.
Mm-mm.
We have, I guess I would submit that we have pretty standard and uniform specs to what is expected of contractors placing asphalt in the region.
The larger towns such as Madison, and the ones that you named are not in the top 17 cities, and we're number 15 of the 17.
We can go to Sioux Falls and
Well,
work, no problem.
we do the DOT specs the same as Sioux Falls does.
Correct. So if we're good enough for Sioux Falls, why do we have to go jump through hoops to try to do something here?
Well, you should have been able to do it because we require the same things.
I understand that, but it's not even just this project, the Center Street project. We called and talked to the engineer that designed it,
Mhm.
and in the statement, in the bidder, it says it's up to the contractor, you can do it in 1 lift or 2 lifts. So anybody who knows anything, 2 lifts is better than 1 lift. Anybody that knows anything, if you give them the option, they're gonna do it in 1 lift. So 10 years later, now this road's junk because they did it in 1 lift.
Mhm.
Because we were negligent on how we did it. But in the patchwork section, it called for 2 lifts, correct?
It was the option could be bid 1 lift or 2 lifts in the Center Street project. Regarding this project, I would beg to differ. You know, we did have 6 bidders, and 3 of them hadn't worked in town in a long time. So I would respectfully disagree that there's something we're doing that nobody wants to work in town. We had 6 bidders for this project that felt comfortable submitting a bid. So I guess in my mind that gives me an indication. 2 of them were within a couple $100 of one another, about $500. So I mean, I'm confident that it was a reasonably solid set of bidding documents, and that was the cost to do it, around the $62,000.
And the city did get stung a couple of years ago in that we had a contractor that came to town and they weren't able to get things done. And so, you know, the city has been stung before, you know, by a contractor that came with good references.
Right.
But, you know, the specs in that I've seen, you know, that our department puts together, they're basically the same thing as what comes out of the engineering firms and what are required of the cities, you know, the larger cities. I cannot speak for Ramona or, Coleman or those. But most all of them in that stick with the DOT standards.
Correct.
And that's what we stick with, was the DOT standards.
So with your factor, like, you said you were stung before, I get it. Obviously they weren't from Madison.
No.
We don't plan on going anywhere. Come this end of the year, we might go somewhere because of this situation.
Sure.
Like, why?
Well, I
why
guess
be local if nobody else is local?
my question is, what part of the requirements did you not want to fill out?
The whole, what's the purpose of it? You need bank statements? If there's a spot here that says bank statements? Does it really matter about how much money we have or don't have?
Have you done a city bid in Madison before?
No.
Then
not,
that would
not as a prime contractor.
Then that's what those other 3 provided, so that we know, you know, that we are hiring someone that is capable of taking on the project and financially responsible.
Well, we wouldn't bid it if we couldn't do it. That's what looks like we guys don't understand is why would we wanna bid something? Okay, let's say the project's $100,000, well, we only got $20,000, obviously, we're not gonna bid it. Cause if you don't have money to pay for material, how the heck are you gonna do it?
Mhm.
So that's part of our responsibility as a contractor. We go, well, we can't afford to do this project, so we're not gonna bid it.
But it's also our responsibility representing the taxpayer to make sure that, you know, that we don't get stung.
Correct.
You know, so, I guess I still defer to Chad as to, you know, what part of the information in that, you know, that you felt was unreasonable, because it the same as what the other larger cities in town or in the state, you know, request. So I guess that's where I'm at.
Okay,
Is
that's fine. Then I'm just gonna be done. You can plan on not having a local asphalt company.
so.
I guess I'd like to say, I hate to see all this work for the city going out of town to other contractors when we got local guys in town here that can do concrete work and asphalt paving, and evidently there must be a problem somewhere along the line that we need to sit here and take a look at and see if we can make it a little bit better towards better communications with our contractors.
That's the thing with Madison. Everybody preaches support local. Well, the first thing to come to it is, yeah, I understand you want bids, but at the same time, what's the point of being local if it never comes back to anybody local?
Did you bid on the
Oh,
project?
No. Like, we didn't even turn a bid in because it was asinine. Like,
What was asinine?
this amendment,
What about it was asinine?
having to do it. Like, what's the purpose of it? I understand so you guys feel more comfortable having it, but at the same time, the contractor's held responsible for whoever gets the bid. And if that contractor cannot do the job or come back and repair the job to what the standards made from Chad, then why are they even bidding it?
We just
Well, they
been
might
down-
not be capable, but then they drag the project out for a really long time, then we end up having to redo the whole thing a year
Correct.
later.
So because of a few bad experiences, and then it's us as a new company trying to benefit the town, spending thousands of dollars in town,
Well-
we get the blame for somebody else's mishaps.
Oh, we just ask you to fill
No.
a little paperwork out once.
And we aren't asking for the balance in your account. It's, do you have an account? And then, you know, I guess, you know, I
Well, I was
seen
just
it
assuming that
briefly, and I guess I didn't see an issue with it.
anybody with a business that had common sense would have an account, if not multiple accounts.
So it sounds like it would be easy to complete the paperwork.
Correct. It was just the fact of the matter of why should we have to.
Chad, have other companies completed the paperwork?
We have had at least under two different biddings over probably the last, I guess it's getting to be 7 years now, who we haven't worked with and had as a contractual relationship, and I included even as a if anybody would have been in a subcontract relationship who we would have had experience in, that was waived as well. It's just anybody that's new, we ask them to fill out a form. It helps us to make an evaluation, try to do some due diligence to review it, and as to, you know, yeah, so that's to answer that. And we would have loved to, you know, have you try to bid and compete, and, you know, there's the bid laws that we have to comply with, and we try to make sure we're adhering to. And then we also just want to make sure we're putting together what is a reasonable set of bidding documents to have a good project. So my apologies that addendum did come out a little bit later, and I, you know, certainly would have entertained any questions had it come out. I know there wasn't a lot of time, but I'm glad to hear it wasn't too burdensome. You said it was a pretty simple form. It was just maybe kind of frustrating that you didn't want to, or were able to get it completed.
Maybe we could go on and on about projects. It's no different than the seal coating the bike trail. You paid $1.35 a square yard, and you could have paid $1.08. You said it's supposed to last 5 years. Have you went and looked at it?
I have not went and looked at it this
That's
year.
straight crap.
Did we get a bid from?
You know, we do. They're the only one that's specified in that type of material, so he just did what he wanted to do, and that's fine. You know, if this is Chad's way, then let's have it Chad's way, and then we won't worry about it.
Mike, are we speaking when we used a different sort of material this last year?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, was it last year or was it the year before? Was it last year? Yeah.
And-
We used a a gilsonite type product that we've seen some different presentations on and has some different characteristics in the oil.
And then you look at a certain section of.
Just a
There was just a small
it was
section.
a very, much smaller section. Correct. Yeah.
Just a section to see it.
Yeah.
All tolerate.
Yeah.
But the problem is, after it was done, we came in and talked to Chad and offered to do a section with our stuff to show a comparison that our stuff would last, and we don't know if this stuff will. Nothing happened. Like, we offered to do it, and we can't do it. If we don't get an opportunity, how the heck do you do anything? That's where we're getting at. Be like, walk through the mud puddle, don't walk through the mud puddle, you know, like, we know our stuff lasts. This guy from Iowa, who knows? You drive by it tonight, look at it, you'll be like, what in the world? Why is this spot super black? Well, because it wasn't watered down or whatever in this area, or they squeegeed it. They did one pass on this. Everybody that knows anything about seal coating, you do 2 passes, 2 coats. That's the only way to make it last.
So is it your contention that you didn't get an opportunity, as you just said, because of the paperwork?
There was nothing, no, you didn't even know about it. The seal coating part. How do you bid something when it's not out there? It's no different than the Center Street project. We had a guy from Thorstead Companies call us and say it was an act of Congress to find it in the bidder sheet. Like, it was almost like it was hidden. If you don't know about stuff, how do you bid it? We would have loved to bid this street. We actually did bid it with Thorstead. And at the same time, we called the engineer that designed it, and we called Chad, because he said this is up to Chad. Well, it called for a 32-foot road, 16-foot passes. Well, it's either highway class paver, or you put extensions on your paver that you got. Chad continued to tell me that he wants it done in 2 passes. Well, that's fine. We gave him the option of doing 3 passes. He tried to say that it would not have the correct grade or slope, but we can set all that with our paver. You do 2 passes with point A, and then you make crown in the middle of the road with the paver, because pavers are designed to put crown in roads. Another opportunity lost. Do you invest in a $500,000 paver for one project? As a company owner, it'd be asinine. You know, it'd be like, we have 5 good dump trucks. Do we need to buy one more just because we can? No. Like,
I'd be happy to talk about each of these individually if we want. I don't know if this is the forum you want. I mean, typically when we have a mainline paving project, it's been customary, and the less longitudinal joints you have in a roadway, it's pretty commonly known in the industry that the less longitudinal joints you can have, the better. And the idea with paving width, of a specification on paving width, is you put one joint at the center, and then of course you tie in at the curb and gutter. So we can get into all these if we want, but if this is the forum you want to, that's up to you.
Yeah.
I'll make, if I may, Mayor, just a couple quick points for you, Matt. And and I obviously don't know some of the inner details as much as you by any means. I will say, and I've seen the addendum. I have it up here right now, and the biggest thing is that when you bid on government projects, whether it be city, state government, whatever, some fortunate, you're going to have to go through paperwork.
and that part doesn't bother me. It's the part getting it a few days prior to the bid being due.
Yep,
If you would have sent it out, if we would have got it with the bid, when we came and picked up the book for the bid specs, it would have been no problem.
And that was unfortunate. Apparently, that did happen, and I would feel that if you'd have called, then we could have given an extension or something, and worked that out. But apparently, that didn't happen either, or whatever. So, this is all kind of done. The other point that I'll try to make is, I don't disagree. I've been on this commission long enough, and I've been through the burnt, from bad contractors from out of town as well, and it's not fun. It's not pleasant. It's not fair to the taxpayers. It's not fair to our city as well. And so that's why we do try to do these type of things. The other thing is that kind of intrigues me a little bit that I think we can look into, and I kind of have to look towards David, is if there's a way to give preference to a Madison company in these bids.
There is absolutely not.
No? Okay.
No.
Because I know in state government you can't. So
It would be directly contradictory to the law that we have to follow.
There you go then. There's our answer.
Look, as a person, I understand the
Yeah.
local preference concept, but it is not permitted in our law. We
Yep.
cannot provide any local preference.
We're not asking for a handout by any means, you know. 'Cause
No.
when we go to bid something, we bid something in Sioux Falls, 98% of the time we're a little bigger. Why?
Okay.
Because we staff 5 to 6 people.
Okay, let me back up just a little bit here. Chad, you said that the bids the notices went out on the 19th and the 26th. So then, how soon would someone have picked up the packet? Would they have picked it up on the 19th or the 20th? Or would they have picked it up like on the 26th?
I think most of these, we may or may not have the exact dates. We could get them, but I think most of them were picked up by the 19th or the 20th. I can't say when.
So
when
right away, basically.
Yes.
And then even though we advertised a week later, and then the addendum went out the day after the second advertisement,
Correct.
somebody could have had the paperwork a week ahead of time and had everything completed except the addendum.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And so you said there are 3 that did have to do an addendum after the 27th?
The addendum modifies the bidding documents and ultimately the contract documents. And all parties
Could
would
you
have
be
had
a
to-
little more clear on what modifies mean?
When you're advertising for bids, you create a specification packet.
Yes.
And that's what goes out that says, please submit us a bid to accomplish this project as noted in here. And if things come up with, based upon whether it's questions or just some observations on further review of the project or others, sometimes an addendum has to be issued to add a point of clarification. Not too long ago, we had an insurance requirement on another addendum. Sometimes there's different ones for, as the contractors are looking at it, they say, oh, well, this may not be the best way to do it. Have you thought of this? You know, different types of things. There's a whole number of things. And if it is appropriate, try to make that determination and issue an addendum in a timely manner. And that is a document that goes out to all the plan holders. We have a plan holders list so that they all receive that, and they would, that changes this by, in some way, shape, or form. It changes this packet that you've given them to give them direction to give you bids according to this packet. And so then they acknowledge that addendum on the bid, and then ultimately when you enter into the contract with whomever the lower bid or lowest responsive bidder is, this packet plus the addendum are the contract documents, are binding. So that's what I mean by the addendum. And then they have to submit their bid so that they can deliver that project in accordance with the specifications, which includes any addendums that are issued.
Okay, and the specifics of this addendum addressed what portion of the bid specs?
There was plan notes included in it that had not been included in the original specs. There was about a page and a quarter of plan notes that just gave various comments. And then also attached to that was the qualification sheet for anybody who hadn't worked in the city, that was requested and required for them to fill out. Anybody who hadn't worked for the city as a contractor or subcontractor within the last 5 years. And that's so that when the bid comes in, if there's anybody new we hadn't worked with, we can read that form and try to make a determination, maybe call references, because references are required on that form, and then make a recommendation to the city commission to award to the lowest responsible bidder.
And so that's the portion, Matt, that you were questioning, was the personal, basically the personal side for the company part of the application.
Yep, I got all kinds of questions, but we can be here all night, so.
Okay. And then did you reach out to Chad on the 27th or the 28th with questions?
Chad called me after he emailed it to make sure that we got everything.
Okay. But then you didn't follow up with any questions with him after that?
It was a while ago. I believe I may have asked some questions, but
Okay.
it's hard to remember what was said and what wasn't.
Well, Well, it's unfortunate, you know, that we're at this point, you know, but, you know, I can see your side of it, you know, I can see Chad's side of it, you know, from the commission and the taxpayers in that, so I don't see any wrong here on either side. I do see the question, so.
Right.
So, and I guess I would, you know, request that, you know, you keep in contact with Chad and you know, and on any other future projects we have coming up, you know, make sure you get all your questions answered ahead of time so you can get a bid in.
By then, I'm sure we'll be located out of town, so it'll be easier.
So, okay. And Mike, I'm going to ask you to come to the microphone and that for the benefit of people at home.
Well, I did have a couple questions because I came in late and I'm not sure all what was talked about. But
Sure.
you're talking about protecting the city of Madison and the taxpayers. Doesn't your performance bond do that?
To a point, yes.
Pretty much.
To a point it does.
Job, you don't do it right. There's a few steps to go through and then you call in the performance bond and then look out.
And we've been down that road.
Yeah, and
Yes.
are you talking
But-
about an electrical contractor?
Here we're talking about blacktop.
But you've been down this road
We have been down this road.
with.
Yes.
You asked him to name towns. I'm asking you to name.
It was an electrical contractor. You are correct. And that, you know, so that's nothing that hasn't been in the news already, you know. But they filled out all the documents that were required. They came with references and that, but performance wasn't there. So, and I guess
As far as what I've heard about a bank statement, I've been in the business since '86 on my own with my brother.
Mhm.
Been in business with my dad since '57. I've never heard of having to fill out a form with a bank statement on it.
well, you know, you've been doing business for the town for many years too, so, you know, that is, you're not the first time, you know, been in.
They put you through the cleaners. If you get a bond, you should know you're okay.
Mhm.
And then another question, if your asphalt doesn't meet density and you don't tear it out, what do you do different?
I don't have that answer for you.
Because that's the purpose of a density test.
Yes.
To make sure it's
Yes.
surfactants at what 92%.
We've had lower densities occasionally, and there's different things that you have as tools, price adjustments and such like that, trying to do your best you can. Again, following similar industry practices, if you will, that the state of South Dakota uses, other jurisdictions use, rather than tearing up, you know, the entire road and such like that. If it's egregiously low, then you take the most drastic step of tearing it out. But if it's a couple tenths of a density, you probably don't take the unreasonable, what I would say would be an unreasonable step to remove the entire asphalt surface to do that.
Yes.
Matt mentioned there were some municipalities, we've worked in one of. Do requirements vary in classes of municipality? Do you know? Requirements for bidding?
I suspect so. Every municipality has their own way to do it. They're very similar, I would say, in a lot
Yeah,
of aspects.
I would
Some
suspect
are-
so also.
Some are slightly different. I have to believe that, yeah.
And a lot of it's impacted by the consultant that helps prepare the plans too. So some consultants, depending on what cities they go to, they'll all have the same specs. So if Banner was in 7 different cities, they'd all have the same spec. Basically, the city might throw their own little tiny tweaks to that particular spec, but it'll be the same spec, more or less.
See, and I guess what I'm hearing is the question wasn't with the specifications that were in the bid, it was with the personal information and that of the company. You know?
But like Dan said, if you do a bid bond, yeah, like, obviously we were gonna work with Johnson Brothers on this project. So not only did one local company lose out, 2 local companies lost out. Granted, Reineke does a shit ton of work in here, excuse my language, but why is it just Reineke in here doing everything when there's Johnson Brothers, there's Michael Johnson, I mean, we could go on and on. You know, Dawson Construction, they're not too far away.
But you understand we have to bid this work, right? And you
Correct.
understand that we have to take the lowest responsible bid.
Yep.
Okay.
What is the lowest, always best?
I said lowest responsible bid.
Okay.
But we couldn't have taken your bid, right? Because you didn't bid.
That's correct. That is correct. But it wouldn't have mattered, because we wouldn't have this piece of paper filled out. Because it says right in it, if it's not filled out, it gets thrown out.
Well, I understand that too. It's like if I go to the bank and get a loan, if I fail to fill out the paperwork, they're not gonna give me the loan either.
Right.
You know, so I guess, you know, it isn't something that I'm feeling that we're doing that is, you know, drastic,
Okay.
you know.
When,
If we've got other companies, and that 3 of them that did fill that out, they must not have thought it was a drastic
You said
request
3
either.
in the last 7 years, correct?
3 in the last 7 years, but for this bid, 3 of them hadn't worked in town. Again, I didn't go to the bid folder to see if they had submitted this form, but I didn't have to because they weren't the lower, the second low bidder. But 3 hadn't worked there, so I'm presuming if I go to the bid folder and open it up and look, there would be, you know, 3 of those forms filled out from that company,
Okay.
those companies. The other thing, just very briefly, you know, we recently went with Mr. Jenks and Mr. Lawrence and I had went through the working with this electrical contractor and the calling of their bonds, and that is not a process you want to go through very often. And not to say that that would have happened with anybody on this project, but we try to do our due diligence as best as we can prior to bidding to avoid even that possibility, because the city will likely be made whole, but with this other project that we're talking about, but it's not without countless additional hours of administration and time by our city attorney, our utility director, and myself to try to get this worked out.
And an unfinished project.
Correct.
and I'll
And a
throw
delay.
out, I was one of the commissioners that was pretty verbal and leaned on Brad about that contractor and you know, and leaned on you again when we come back through it, and I'm like, okay, are you, make sure so we do try to do some of that upfront work to make it easier and smooth for the whole city. The other thing that I'll mention to you, Matt, is you have 4 commissioners and a mayor that you can always contact. You know, our information, it's on the web, our email, phones, everything. If you see something in the city that doesn't seem right, look right, feel right, get a hold of us.
Okay, I'll start a list.
You know, and
It's no different than our city doing patchwork.
we all have our specific areas, but I mean, you can certainly reach out to all of us. So.
And we're always open to suggestions. You know,
Whether or
no
not
question.
they're good or bad.
Clarity, did you get the paperwork in time to fill out and get it in?
It was, he called me on a Friday. Obviously, we were working, so
Yeah.
whenever I received it, it was due that Tuesday, I believe. So,
So you did get to it on a Friday, and you had Tuesday, till Tuesday to get there. And I realize that's a short window in
Right.
some ways, but I just wanted to know. So you did.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it was
And
on the
I'm
verge
just
of being.
trying to establish my understanding,
Yep,
so I know.
yep.
So- And I'd encourage you to continue pursuing the bidding process with us. I would.
I would too.
I-
I'd echo that.
Anybody, anybody, you know, any problems we have, that you have with the process, I would suggest first you go to Chad. I think he tries to level the playing field for us. Okay, and if it's not understandable or why you have to do something, then ask him the question. You know, and if you don't get the answer that you need, which I think you will, but then let us know. You know, but I would encourage you, please, let's try to work with this, and we will do what we can.
We've tried.
Yeah, I understand.
That's all we can do.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler Technologies, do we? Okay.
I can do a brief introduction as to what we're doing, and that'll, while she's hooking this all up. Basically what happened was the electric department was looking for some software that would allow us to track our work orders, service orders, things like when a meter needs to be replaced, that type of stuff, and be able to communicate that back and forth with the finance office, utility billing folks, so that we could have a better way of creating forms, tracking what we're doing, making sure that nothing gets missed, and then having something that's interoperable. It goes from one person to another person. They can open it up and look at it and work on it. So that's where it started. So as electric department, we started went down this path, posted on the APPA, American Public Power Association's website, and wanted to find out what other communities were using for that type of software. And came back with 7 or 8 different recommendations. We kind of did a screening process, weeded them down to about 4, and then we had another one that came in at the end, so I think we did 5 total. Went through webinars, screened them all out again, and then came down to 2 final candidates, and then had a second time around with webinars with them, and decided that the one that seemed to be the best for us was a company called Tyler Technologies. It has a suite of software applications for municipalities that would coincidentally do everything that we do, not just the work orders and service orders. It had mobile apps, it had a lot of things, so we were pretty keenly interested in it. So then we contacted the finance office, and the finance officer said yes, she had been looking at another company to do the financial side, and asked if it was Encode. I said, well, it was Tyler Technologies, and it turns out that they're the same company. Encode is one of their components of that software suite I was talking about. And so coming from 2 different directions, we ended up in the same place, and that's Texas. And that's where these gentlemen are. One of them is probably from the Texas area today. I don't know where they're at today, but they came up here and we did a day-long, if you will, presentation to all the different departments that could make it, and looked at the software. And right now all the departments are fairly in favor of it. I don't know of anybody that's got any big hang-ups on it. So, but I'd like to let the folks from Tyler Technologies do their presentation. And we got Ron Parachi, and then Larry House.
Ron, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Can you see the screen that says City of Madison Board of Commissioners?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. We are going to be moving around the screen here, so if Larry gets off and if he's talking about something that doesn't appear to be showing, just let us know so the screen can catch up. Sometimes the internet plays dirty tricks on us. So we're ready to go. Am I cleared for takeoff, Tess and Brad?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
All right, excellent. All right, so real brief, we're going to try to just do a brief overview today. We're not going to get into the weeds on anything, just try to give the Board of Commissioners an idea of what the software you've looked at, and hit some of the highlights that Brad was quite adequately summarizing there. First off, I'd just like to just talk a little bit about your current system. You're utilizing Confluence, which is an ACF derivative. The company ACS sold to Xerox, and then Xerox sold to Confluence. It is legacy-based software. It's written in a program called RPG, which is an old language. It was, that type of software has been around since my hair is now gray. It used to be black. So it's been something that's that's been come through the years. A couple of the things is the processes can be cumbersome with old software, with legacy software, and also your access to information is limited. I realize it served you well in the past, but it's quite evident that to survive in this current environment, change is needed to serve your citizens better. So that's when we got called. We always like to talk about choosing the right partner. Tyler Technologies, we've been 50 years in the business. We're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The call letters are TYL. We are subject to as a public traded corporation, we're scrutinized very closely with our financial statements. 10 years ago, our stock was selling at 11. Today, it's over $220 a share. We have over 4,000 employees. We have a lot of customers. We have over 50 accounts in South Dakota using Tyler products. One of the highlights we like to talk about is our Evergreen policy, which means basically once you buy Tyler products, as long as you continue paying your annual support or your subscription fees, the next generation software as well as current software updates and upgrades are automatically delivered to the city of Madison and the utilities. So you never really have to make that reinvestment again. You automatically get the next level. So right now we're talking about Encode 10. If we come out with Encode 20, you automatically get it at the city of Madison. We also offer on-site training and support. Our support hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we answer our calls all in live in real time. So when someone has an issue, they can call us, and we like to we return the call. Or we actually handle the call on the first contact. 95% of the time we are able to take the call on first contact. 84% of the time we resolve the call on the first contact, and that's what we shoot for. One of the things, Cass and Brad asked me to show, just to highlight some of the citizen-facing applications. I pulled up a screen that it just shows the account detail for a utility billing client. It's important to note that when someone pays online, it's a verified payment. We know exactly who's paying. We know exactly what they owe. And so when we bring them into a cash collections batch, it takes a matter of seconds for someone to pay online, and automatically the utility office knows that they've made a payment online, and we can make sure that a citizen doesn't get upset because we cut them off or send them a delinquent notice because they haven't paid when in fact they have. The other thing is I'd like you to notice is that there's a lot more information. Larry's going to get into that, of what that citizen can do, the account information they can see, the consumption histories out there. If there's a payment arrangement, if I want to see my bill online, I can click that view bill at the bottom of the screen and automatically see the bill. So online payment, taking everything online and making it a fully automated process is very important. We also want to talk about a program called eNotify. Basically, it is an automated phone collection system so that your utility billing office doesn't have to sit down and try to make phone calls to every citizen that's delinquent. It's just for 10 cents per completed call. Our software does the collection process for you. And I highlighted an example. City of Milledgeville, Georgia, started using eNotify to make collections easier. The system calls the citizens and let them know if they have a past due amount owed or if they're in danger of being cut off. Milledgeville is a college town similar to Madison, and collections can be a challenge sometimes. The first time we was notified, they had 978 past dues at 8 a.m. when they ran cutoffs. They put notify to work, and by 3:15 the same day, nearly 50% had paid after being called by the system. And these were the tough clients, the ones that are tough to collect. On the following day, they were down to 100 accounts that were delinquent. We think that's a testimonial to how powerful this product can be. And Larry will talk to you a little bit more about that. We also highlighted a program that takes Encode mobile. So anywhere, anytime, anything. A lot of the personnel that you hire are millennials, citizens are millennials, and they want to be able to get access to information, as well as the commissioners. If you want access to information, we can provide up-to-date information about your budget, about whether a vendor's been paid, whether you've got if any departments that's approaching 10% of budget by using smart cards. We can give you that information on the mobile, on a tablet, on your cell phone, anywhere, anytime, anything. So that's really another highlight of our product. The first thing we showed the city when we were up there on May 2nd was a feature called Global Search. And I'm not aware of another vendor that has this feature. Basically, what it allows you to do, if you go on Amazon and look for a red sweater, you can type in red sweater and see all the red sweaters. Based on your access role or your security role in the organization, if I type in rubber boots, I can go out and see everywhere where rubber boots or John Deere appears in the system without really having to run the program to look it up. So if you can run a search engine, or if you can have, if you can run a search engine and type, basically, you can find information in our software. So the idea is to make it easy to use so that basically anybody can run it. And that's really kind of the highlight. Okay, I'm going to get off the call now. Larry, you can go ahead and take over. Larry's going to give you a quick overview of some of the applications that we were told that you need to take a look at and highlight. So Larry, it's all yours.
Right. Well, thanks, folks, for giving us a chance to visit with you just a little bit this evening. And like Ron said, we won't take you very things that will give you quick access to information. And what we're seeing right here is an example of a dashboard. This is one for someone in finance. This might be one that someone like Tess is using, or other folks to keep up with budget information and various other key figures that they're looking for. For example, I want to know what departments are within 10% of their budget. So at a glance, I can see that very quickly. And of course, it's color-coded to let me know what my expenditures are, encumbrances and reserves, and the actual balance in my budget. So quick way to view that, and even a link here to send them an email to let them know that, hey, you're getting pretty close to your limit there. Other things that you may want, employees approaching the Affordable Care Act limit. All of those smart cards are dependent on how each user's role is set up, so that people in finance see just the things that they need to see. People in payroll and personnel see things like, well, here's people's birthdays are coming up in the next month, so maybe I just want to shoot them an email real quick. So some relevant information, some helpful information, things that could help along the way. Ron mentioned the global search. It's always run a period of time. He gave the example of the rubber boots. I want to know where the mop buckets are. So if I need to know maybe where I ordered those mop buckets from last year, or when I ordered them, I can't remember, and I don't want to go dig through the file cabinet to find out. Let me go find them, and so we can just that quickly find out, more information about those mop buckets, or someone's name, maybe it's an employee. Chris walks in and he needs to know some information. I'll limit that to payroll employees. Lots of Chris's, and then from here I could actually view some basic information about Chris and even go to his employee record. We'll have lots and lots more information. And that opens up, this is kind of what we call a 360 view, which really just means we try to cram as much information on the screen as we could, so that you can see that. So just another way to allow you quick information to the system from your dashboard. There's a lot more behind that, but that kind of gives you an idea about what someone might see from their workstation each day. From a citizen standpoint, Ron mentioned the online portal for utility billing. I'm going to log in here. And from a utility standpoint, they get the ability to view their account or accounts. This guy's got 3. Ron says you can view the bill from here. You can select which item you want to pay online, or information about their recurring payments. For example, they always want to use a credit card to pay for their balance. So that's stored not on any of your servers or any of your workstations, depending on irregardless of whether you're hosting or not. Because all this credit card information resides on our secure servers in Dallas, Texas. So PCI compliance is our responsibility. So to take that payment, they just enter the little code. They get a confirmation code after that. They can actually print the receipt from here. And as Ron said, when I submit that payment, it's all our own development. So at this point, it's a pending payment in the system. So if you run that, they would run the cutoff list at that point, this guy would be on. And then other things they can do from the account, they can actually go and view history about each one of the accounts. Each one of these little blue underlined fields are fillable fields. Not only could I view the bill, I can view a little more detail about my balance. People are always saying how much I need to pay to stay off the cutoff list, well, that's it right there. Their arrangements, their deposits, other things about the account, either their transaction history. You can filter that, view their consumption history, and then even just basic information about the account, and even let them submit changes on certain items that you might want them to IP. Maybe a little humor thrown in at the end too. But Ron, go ahead and do that up 11 minutes.
Was due on June 20th, 2018. Please call the City of Madison Utility Office at area code 605-256-7500 or access our website at www.cityofmadisonsd.com to make immediate payment and avoid cutoff. You can also pay in person at 116 West Center Street. Failure to pay your bill by June 10th, 2018 will result in your service being cut off, a $75 fee charged to your account, and a really, really bad day for you. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This is a message from the City of Madison Utility Department.
You sounded
I'm just going to repeat itself right there. So you control what that says, and that goes out to the people that you define in your independent development. So that's what citizens see, and that's where we can interact with them and let them do a lot of what they need to see and view themselves. There's also, from the standpoint of the folks that are out in the field doing the work, the ability for them to see certain things that they need to see, and that's where mobile service orders come in. So instead of having to print out paper all the time, carry that around with them in the truck on a clipboard or whatever, then there is a mobile app for viewing the service orders. So instead of carrying the clipboard around with them, they have a tablet with them in the truck, and each one of those pin drops is where I need to go do some work on a particular account. If I tap on one of the pin drops, it'll actually bring up information about what this is. It's a reread. If I tap on the right arrow over there, that would actually give me turn-by-turn directions on how to get there. I'm not going to do that right now because this is in Colorado and I'm sitting in Lubbock, Texas right now, so that'd be a really long flight. Not a whole lot in between. On the left-hand side is where I can actually tap on the service order and do the work that I need. Here's the reread, there's the address at the top, a place for notes that we may have given them. The middle button down here, or one of the middle buttons down here, is actually where you enter the reads. Add pictures if you need to, and then actually just complete it in the view. Because this is also our own application, our own development, when they complete the service order in the field, it affects the account in the office. So if it's cutoff day, that's huge. So we know whether or not those service techs have actually been there to shut them off yet. So one way that we can communicate with them in the field without having to run back and forth all the time, without having to call them on the radio and various other things like that. So that's on the side of the utility. From the change gears a little bit, we also have a portal for employees, so they can view their pay information, so they can log in, view their relevant information, see any announcements we put out there, give them links to maybe the retirement or health insurance website, view and submit a change request. They need to make changes to their profile, and also a paycheck calculator. So if someone is curious about how's it going to affect my paycheck after my kids go off to school, after they turn 25. So my federal allowance is going to drop from 5 to 3. Or whatever else they may want to choose. So pulling this information straight out of payroll, but not feeding anything back. A one-way street. So they can actually do the calculation themselves and see how it's going to affect them. In addition to that, just being able to see their history, view their paychecks, see the details about that. Actually view the pay stub or their W-2 or various other things they might need. And then the other thing is just really Encode Express, which kind of brings us back to where we started, except I'm really not in the software like I was earlier. thing we did from my desk as I have on my tablet right here. So it brings all the information from all the various pieces of the software that we have, whether it's financial, utility, payroll, whatever applications you might have, all of that information is there at your fingertips. So getting that to your folks lets them work smarter, not harder. And one of the things that I always think we strive for is to save time. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things to a lot of people is you ask them about their software today, and then usually the answer is, yeah, we can do that, but it takes me a while. And so if we can save time, then we free up that time so they can spend their time on things that are really relevant to what they need to be doing instead of things that are just consuming their time. And so they can work smarter with that. So would be glad to answer any questions if you've got some. We want to respect your time too tonight, but we want to give you just a quick look at how this could help both the folks that work there for the city as well as the commissioners to have the information that you need at your fingertips in very easy fashions.
Which modules are we looking at getting? What departments?
What departments? All departments. And with this mobile feature that we have here too, departments that don't have this right now, I'll look at Justin, departments that don't have this right now would have the capability of, right now we have, based on seats, you have to pay X amount per seat for the department to access this. With this mobile app, we can go to the 7 o'clock ball game and bang out our 2019 budget if we really wanted to with the mobile app. We won't do that. But this would be huge for a lot of departments.
I think right
Maybe
now
there's a
we have
message in
set
there
for
somewhere.
10 power users is kind of what we asked them for a price on, which is most of finance office, if not all finance office, and then just a handful outside of that. I think the plan is that this mobile would probably be sufficient for the rest as they phase them in. I think initially you'll just start with kind of who's using ACS now, and then you'll pull the new users in at a later time.
And then the mobiles are no charge if they come along basically for the ride with the power users. So you can have as many mobiles as we want without having to charge extra.
One of the things in that you had mentioned in that, on the messages going out was voice. Does it also have text capability for those people who receive texts?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
That will be huge for our.
We can email notices. Of course, we can mail them, still print them, mail them. But with the notify, we can't call them, but it does have the capabilities of sending text messages.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So.
Commissioner Corbin, I think the question you asked, it will touch every department, but for the most part, I see the utilities being the big benefactor, and then the finance office.
Financial, there's a fixed asset portal that we want that will be huge as far as spreadsheet, a lot of spreadsheet information that we're doing right now that will be right within the system here. Time and attendance system for payroll, which will be huge. Also a scheduling that some departments will want to look at, a scheduling feature.
Can we finally pay people without printing
Amen.
a check?
Yes, we can.
7 years
Yes,
I've
we
been
can.
wanting that.
The one thing that we wanted to do is right now, because of the way the system works, everybody has spreadsheets on the side for different things, whether it's inventory, whether it's, cash or whatever it is. There's all these spreadsheets off the side of the system itself. And you get a lot of islanding too, because there's separate software systems that don't talk to each other. And so there's very limited interoperability between the different islands or the different silos, if you will, of information. And so the idea with this was if we got them one common platform, we could tear down the walls, we could have everybody on the same sheet of music, we'd have a much faster, much more visible look at our finances on a given day. And that's something as a manager I think is really important. Weather affects our utilities quite a bit. It affects our bottom line, and we need to be able to track that. With the flux of the way the cash comes in twice a month and some of that stuff, it's hard to get a good idea where you're at with our current system at times, because sometimes the bills will lag for a while. The nice thing about this is you can have a pending transaction, so as soon as you get the bill and you enter it in the system, it shows up as pending and is taken out of your total. So you know that that's going to come out. Right now it's not exactly that way. It depends on where it falls, and you can have a pretty big swing in what you actually have for funding in certain line items. So it's nice to have that stuff. And there's a lot of other things that are really nice. That dashboard is phenomenal for somebody that's in management. So you can take a quick glance at things in the morning and see right where you're at from the previous day's transactions.
What are we looking at for a timeline for implementing?
There's some options.
7 to 9 months?
Yes.
Is that what you said, Larry?
Yes, 7 to 9 months test. That's typical implementation from order when we get an agreement to go live.
So and then it's my understanding that we're looking at budgeting this for 2019.
We would like to look at that as for a certain thing, and then if depending on how cash and everything looks, to maybe try to move that up a little bit. As we've evaluated this and kind of seen what could happen, it's hard to kind of stay where you're at. You know, there's I'd say general excitement inside the city of, boy, it sure would be nice if we had this software now we could fix this problem. And every day you go find something else. Boy, if we had the software, we could fix it. So if there's any way we could move that up, we'd certainly like to. And we'd like to evaluate the situation we're in financially and get back with the commission on that.
I could see some value in starting before the end of the year, just because doing it in the winter months, I guess. But
I think our discussion was, and with Ron today, I talked to him, would be if we started early to just do like the foundation work, just kind of get the ball rolling, kind of do some of the harder stuff, so that when you do hit 19, you can kind of hit the ground running and make that conversion a little bit faster.
We like bringing people from Texas to South Dakota in them winter months.
Did you catch that, Larry?
I did hear the word Texas and South Dakota, so
Commissioner Waldner said he likes to bring people to South Dakota from Texas in the winter.
yeah, I've been there in the winter. Right now, I'd love to come up there because we're at 100 plus, so I would love to come.
So I guess where I see that we're at right here at this point in time, this year was appearances, acknowledgments, and it was presentation.
Yes.
And it would just acknowledge the presentation for this evening and then wait for further, requests and that, at a future date.
Yeah. Hearing no objections, we'd like to move forward with evaluation of where we sit financially and come back with a recommendation to the commission.
Well, I think, yeah, you can do that without a motion, so.
Yeah.
So, really appreciated your presentation, Larry. I do have a Subway restaurant, and I have all of these capabilities and that on my pocket phone. I can check and see who's in the store right now. I can see where sales are. I can see a lot of this dealing with the operation of my Subway as well as the employees that are there. So I really see a benefit to the city for this as well.
Continuity is really beautiful.
Yes.
I think you'd be really happy with it.
Yes. So, anyone have any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I want to thank you for your presentation and that, and hope you guys cool down there, because what I've seen on the news and that doesn't look good in 3 digits.
Thanks so much, Brad, Dennis, and Commissioners. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So with that, we could do a motion to acknowledge the presentation and then leave it at that for this evening and then wait for further information.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there anything on the consent calendar anyone would like removed? Not? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no old business, under new business, authorize the mayor to sign the recipient contract, State of South Dakota, Enhanced Mosquito Control Efforts. And Mike, did you want to address that?
Who knows more about mosquitoes than Mike?
Oh, there's a lot of people that know a lot more about everything. every year we fill out a grant application to the state, the Department of Health, and they kind of merged them together. There used to be a surveillance grant and then a enhanced, enhanced surveillance, and then a larvicide and adulticide grant, and they merged them together. And this year, I think, if I remember exact number, we received $4,185 that we could put towards spray, surveillance, anything to do with mosquito control. So the surveillance, we received a lot more money in the past, but I think there's a lot more communities that are participating in this now that it's starting to come out and everything else. The surveillance, it does take some time, but it does help us save money in the long run, because then we're not spraying when wasting overtime or spray when we don't have the mosquito count. Actually, mosquito counts have been very low up to about now. With all this rain, I'm waiting in about 3 or 4 days. It's going to get pretty bad. So, but it's a grant from the South Dakota Department of Health. Bill Shellcraft in charge of it. I was going to talk to Bill about some of the specifics about this grant. He is currently on vacation till July 9th, so we'll be in touch with him on July 10th.
Very good. And this is one that we've received in the past, and we got the email that we received it again. So
In past years, have we spent the whole grant?
Yeah, we put it towards our wages. A lot of it towards to help out with the wages in the park department too, because we're counting mosquitoes, we're doing surveillance, the spraying, so and then we put a lot. Spray is extremely expensive. The adulticide spray that we apply in the evenings. So yeah.
Let me clarify that. When you say you put it towards wages,
Towards the mosquito surveillance part of it.
So it's not.
We track all that on software that we have at the public workshop, and we track everything that we do.
At this point, we're not sure what the value is of, because they rolled those together, of mosquito surveillance at this point. And it's not that we don't want to do it, it's just where it's taking us with the dissemination of the funds a little bit more. So he's going to check with Bill on this and find out what the
We
particulars
used to
are.
receive $9,000. Now we've got just over 4,000. So it really, it does help with knowing that we have 1,000 mosquitoes in our traps today. We need to be spraying, or my phone's not going to stop ringing. So let's get it out there, spray it, watch it, and you can get a chart and see that the spray does work. I can prove it. When you spray it, it drops and then it comes back, climbs back up, and then you spray again the next day. You'll have 20 mosquitoes in the traps and everything else, and they're all dead. So, but is it worth counting them, sending them to the state to know that we already have West Nile present? And everybody knows that South Dakota's got West Nile in every county. It's just getting the mosquito to bite you. So, hey, we test them, and then those test positive, and we know we have areas of where they're at. So,
It's not that I don't think that we don't want to do the counting, it's just that it's time consuming when we do it. It's hours spent when we're already short on hours as it is with park stuff in the summer. So we'll see what they say.
yeah, and if it's going to affect our grant money, we'll keep counting and send them to the state in future years.
other questions or comments?
If there are none, I'd make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the recipient contract, State of South Dakota Enhanced Mosquito Control Efforts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Resolution number
Next one.
2018-11, establish guidelines for public comment during meetings of public bodies. This here resolution, that is a compilation of guidelines and that are used by a number of cities and that within the state of South Dakota. And since I've been mayor, and to my knowledge, the predecessors here and that have not had an issue with the public wanting to come and speak before the commission before. But obviously in that this came before the legislature because there have been some towns that did. So with that, we have gone through and looked at the guidelines and that other cities have used and put together something that I feel, and I think anyone else that we've asked to review it feels, gives us a guideline, for people being able to come and speak before the commission and any of the committees that are part of the city of Madison. It just basically puts out guidelines and that, requesting that whoever's coming to speak before the bodies and that do so in a civil manner, and that they will always be given, up to 3 minutes and that, to visit. And again, this is something that I don't feel we've ever had an issue with here in Madison or any of our committees, but we are meeting the state new law by having a resolution in that gives us guidelines for us and the committees. Questions or comments?
Well, there are three things that I think in looking at that the limiting of time, that we just don't open up and people would have as much time as they need to, but also not cutting them short. I think it was 3 minutes in here.
Yes, but it does give you the opportunity to extend it.
Okay.
The other entities that I talked to, the 3 minutes
Yes.
is very standard.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing was that I think that item 7 says it, but I think items that are on the agenda will not be subject to the open comment period.
Well, because they can address it when we.
I know, but I
hit that
think it
part of
needs
the
to be
agenda.
defined. And I think 7, item number 7, comments related to items on the current agenda must be made during the discussion of that agenda item. Just the reverse of that is what I've heard in the past, is just that during the open comment period, items that are on the agenda will not be discussed. But I think I'm just trying to put some clarity to that so that people understand. It doesn't mean they can't make comment when that agenda item comes up. It just means that there's a set agenda and during the open comment period, we will not address items that are on the agenda. Okay? I think that's critical. It's also a time-consuming thing. And then the other thing is, and I'm not sure, I couldn't find this in here, maybe it is, but I think it's important that we will not address personnel issues during the open comment period. If somebody wants to come in and complain about something, a personnel issue, and that there is a method to that. But I don't think it's appropriate to address personnel issues about any given member of our staff. It does not mean that we're not willing to hear that within the forum for that to be taken up to the mayor's office or other places. Okay? So, a couple of thoughts I had about it.
Was that a motion to amend?
I don't know. It's just a really good idea, though.
I guess, what we have before us here has been out to the city and then out to the county. And the county's attorney has looked through, what they put out there. This had more steps to it, addressing some of the things that you're talking about. And the attorneys just felt that, it wasn't something that needed to be in there. So we went from, I think it was about 12 steps down to the 7 that are currently here. So I hear what you're saying, and if you feel there's one of them on here that has different wording.
Yeah, I'd look to see if that might be in here somewhere, that personnel issues will not be discussed in the open forum. I'm not sure they ever be discussed, actually.
Right, and that's something that we wouldn't do anyway. So,
I think, Kelly, Commissioner Johnson, I think on item number 3 where it says threatening, I think if anybody comes in and starts talking about personnel, then, it's threatening, and or could be obviously vulgar's got a wide range, but that might be something that would be to the discretion of the mayor or the chair of that committee that is running that meeting to stop the individual at that point in time. But it would be nice if the personnel part was clearly defined, but
I just think once somebody's name, personnel matter comes up and it's publicly discussed, it loses its, but even the name is mentioned, I guess. Sounds a little like Harry Potter. But once the name is mentioned, I just feel like it's in some ways a violation of personnel rights.
And I don't think this board will have such a problem with it. Where I get worried and concerned is airport board, community center board, library board. They have so much changeover in who that chairperson is or president of that board, and they're not going to know exactly. They're not trained up in specifically those things. And I don't know if that puts us in a liability position or not, but I'm okay with the way that it looks, but again, you know, that might be something to direct the finance office to is do some training for, because I can tell you that in other meetings, they're not going to know. I mean, they struggle with open meeting rules.
We can certainly work with other boards and committees, and we've already got sign-up sheets going, and we'll relay this to them and work with them as we need to.
Did David
Yes, he did.
look at this?
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay.
And whether we have our resolution adopted in that, basically in that the public comment period goes into effect July 1. So it's already in effect, and we do have a sign-in sheet there, you know, that I don't know if anyone signed in or not. But again, I feel that, since this commission has been here and previous commissions, I don't think it's ever been an issue here. Anyone who had something they wanted to come in and discuss would have been able to do that. But we just do have to have something as guidelines in that to meet the July 1, requirement from the legislature that we have public comment, period.
I think it enhances the openness of the commission. We had a defined public comment period on the school board in the years I was there, and it allowed people to say this is the time for open comment with some provisions, and it allowed people to know this is when I can come and speak 10 minutes down on the agenda, and there was a certain openness to that period that I think was important for the board to have. So I'm really pleased to see this. I think it enhances our agenda. It may change it at times.
Well, and a lot of times the public doesn't know and understand that to get on the agenda, you have to tell us 24 hours ahead of time. And so we've had people come in and want to speak about things, and one in particular thing, well, it's the anniversary when the flood hit in 2012, not the 93 flood, but a group came to discuss it with us, and they weren't on the agenda, and we did allow them to speak, but obviously we had no interaction and didn't discuss or make any, motions or anything after it. But one just real small thing, Jen, is the sign-up sheet. I would maybe recommend that we put a sign out front or outside the doors, kind of like the state legislature. You've been there, Mayor, and that way people can sign it there, and then when the meeting starts, then you can bring the sheet in, and if there's nobody on it, then we continue on. If they are, then you go through that process, because if you leave it here, people are going to have to walk and then try to find it, and just clear direction gives clear results. So let's just make it as easy as possible. Some signage.
And then one of the other things in that we speak, in addressing that was in the 12 or 13 steps before, it did say that anyone, when you got to the end, if there was anyone who wanted to speak, and that, the chairman could allow that to happen. Yep. So,
would you put it down as announcements or up as appearances?
No, you see where it says public comment? We've already got it on our agenda for tonight.
Yeah, I know. But after tonight, to allow the people, are they going to do it underneath new business or announcements?
No, under public comment.
Okay.
Right where it's located. Okay. This is where we've done it in the past, and for the reasons, we have our agenda set. We had people that came. We had people that gave a presentation. The normal business is taken care of. We allow public comment, on things, and then we move to announcements, and then on down. So it basically just follows what we've done for years. It's just that now we have to have something in writing, that says we've met the requirements of the legislature for July 1.
Do you need a motion on it?
Yes,
we
please.
do.
It's a resolution.
I move establish resolution number 2018-11, the guidelines for public comment during meetings of public bodies.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Seeing no public comment, seeing no, did we have an announcement? Yes, sir.
Since you requested public comment or asked about it, I would like to approach the microphone. If I may.
Please. And then for the audience at home, I would ask that you state your name.
That's one of the, I'm Michael Hennon. I live at 514 North Washington Avenue here in Madison. That's one of the things I was going to mention, Mr. Mayor, is that many times during the council or the commission meetings, I see people approach the microphone and sit down and speak, and they're identified as Mike or George or Jim or Sally, and you all know them. But for the record, I think it's important that a person's actual name and what they do be mentioned. Like George is the in charge of public utilities, so he identifies what his position is, and the citizen identifies who they are, for the benefit of not only your video record, but maybe your actual record as well. I've been to many of your meetings, as you know, and I'm kind of a civic nut. I like to go to council meetings wherever I've lived. And one of the things I think that's helpful with regard to your public comment period, and 3 minutes, by the way, is a pretty standard thing that I've seen in other cities as well, where most people can say what they need to say in 3 minutes time, and that's not burdensome or unrealistic to expect that. Also, with regard to the sign-in sheet, some of the cities that I've lived in have little cards that they put out in front. And you sign up a card either for the public speaking portion or for the agenda items. And that's just one idea you might consider. And those are brought in and passed around to the mayor or whoever is the person who's going to be calling on the speakers. And that way you have an idea of what you have. And as you mentioned earlier, you don't have to come up in front and sign up. And the cards are brought in by an appropriate person who's given that responsibility and are passed around to the chairman. But I appreciate the chance to give you whatever it's worth, my observations on those things.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming to the meetings, too.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Please. And then following his comment, if you give your first and last name. Thanks, Mark.
Just a question. I know we purchased the East River building out on Highland. Has that been paid for? I guess it's kind of lost in the news. When do we take ownership or what on that?
Just basic point of clarification in that. We will not take ownership of it until East River is completely finished with it and has removed the things in that they're going to take from the building. So it could be late 2018, it could be in 2019. There is not a date set.
There is a date in the agreement. It's I want to say on or before December 1st, if I remember the date right. Okay. So it's on or before December 1st. We'll definitely have possession of it.
Of this year?
Yes.
Okay.
And budgeted for in this year's.
That's when we'll pay for it as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's something that just more clarification. A reserve has been built over the years in that 4A building, and so the money, has been appropriated over time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay. Under announcements, do we have any announcements?
Brad and I, we talked about the notice that we had in the paper the other day. You want to elaborate on that a little?
Certainly. Rural Development is coming to the end of their fiscal year, and they have some monies available for loan and grant. Primarily, we'd like to find grant monies for the city of Madison, and so put out a notice of intent in the newspaper, which they put an article in with Chad provided some information for, which was fantastic. The idea is that any grant monies that we can get would be fantastic. There's definitely a lot of need in the water system, both in piping and in storage. And right now we're going through the process of evaluating the right amount of storage with the, the old tank, I believe is on the, what we call the west tank, is from 1935, if I remember what I read here earlier today. And so it's, it's aging out. It's got some other things that we're concerned about, but we need to have more storage volume in the future. And the tank that we're going to put in is going to be another, 75 or 100 year product that we need to size it for today, but also with the mind towards the future. So we're going through that process. So that's one of the things we're looking at. The other one is that there's a fair amount of line in the ground that's 4-inch, and it's also cast iron pipe, and that's what a lot of our breaks are throughout the winter, is a cast iron pipe. I think there's something along the lines of 65 miles of total pipe in town, and I want to say 40 some odd miles is cast iron. And if you start looking at budget and everything, and let's say we're real proactive and we can get, just easy math, half a mile a year. That's a lot of years just to replace the cast iron pipe. If we can be real proactive and get a mile a year, it's still a lot of years to replace the cast iron pipe. So it's one of those things that if we can do something to jumpstart that process, get some grant monies from rural development to shorten that 40-year time span down a little bit, then that's what we want to do. And so we applied for some monies. I know the numbers looked really big, and there's some things that are in the grant application that are not eligible, that we're going to have to come up with matching funds from the city. But it's just one of those things. I think it's in order to jumpstart that process, in order to get a good start on that process, we need to get going as soon as we can, because the only thing I know is that every year prices go up, and we'll never get it done as cheaply as we can get it done now or next year in this matter. Start the project. We can have about 2 years to do the project. So we got, there'd be a lot of work over that short time frame, but it's something I think that is definitely in need. The issue with the water tower, in addition to being just that it's aged out, is it's 25 feet lower than the one on the east part of town. And so they have to be in 2 separate pressure zones, which reduces your cross flow. You get stagnant lines. You don't have pressure equalization. If you have a large user someplace, you don't have two ways to get the water to it, so you don't get pressure equalization. There's all these issues that come with it. So from a distribution standpoint, between the bigger mains and the additional storage, and both of them being at the same height, we could really improve the distribution system inside the city of Madison, fire flows especially. Did I leave anything out?
And so at this point in time, the amount that you've asked for has been a large amount, hoping in that, we can get something, toward that project. But if, depending on what was or is received, then we would size the project appropriately.
Yes, sir. So it's, the water system does have some cash put away, but it's nowhere near enough to do a project like what we're talking about. But it's also an opportunity for us to try to shrink that time frame to get out of the cast iron lines and get into larger lines and PVC pipe.
And anytime you do that, you reduce the problems of breakage and that for not only the workers and that, but also for the citizens in Madison.
Yes, sir.
So
convenience and safety. I mean, it's all in that project. So
very good, very good. And the reason that that they're doing this under an announcement is the information was put out there, and this way it gives the public a little bit more knowledge of what the city's intent is in applying for these dollars.
And Chad had some nice comments on that Friday article. Thanks, Chuck.
Other announcements?
Just briefly, 4th of July is coming up. I ask people to abide by the city's guidelines on fireworks. I guess it struck me this last year, there have been some articles about some folks who have come back from recent wars, suffering from PTSD, and the fireworks are sometimes a little hard on their nerves. So if you would please be mindful of that and be sensitive to that, both for safety purposes, but also for the convenience of our citizens. So have a safe, happy 4th, but please abide by the rules. Right, Chief?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other announcements, questions, comments?
Motion to move into executive session?
Motion to move into executive session. Do we have a second?
Bob, second, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now in executive session. Thank you, everyone, for coming.